Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. Vox Agent is made by AI for business executives that work with AI. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, a really massive concept, sovereign AI, or SAI. We've got a comprehensive research report here breaking it all down, and our mission really is to figure out what this huge shift means, not just in theory, but, practically, for compliance, strategy, risk, especially if you're running a multinational corporation.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most critical strategic conversations happening right now. Sovereign AI, at its heart, it's a fundamental change, a real paradigm shift away from, let's say, the way tech used to be globalized. The core definition we're working with is a nation's, or maybe even a large enterprise's, ability to actually develop and control its own AI, its capabilities, its data, the infrastructure it runs on, and crucially, all within its own legal jurisdiction. It's really driven by geopolitics, by economics, this idea of digital nationalism. It's about strategic autonomy in the digital realm.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. Because sovereignty itself, that term has really evolved in the tech space over just the last few years, hasn't it?
It really has.
For executives listening, this is like the next stage of digital control. We started, remember, with data residency, just worrying about, where the servers physically were.
Right, simply where the bits and bytes were stored.
Then it became data sovereignty, which meant, okay, the data is subject to local laws, no matter who actually owns the cloud infrastructure.
Exactly, subject to the laws of the land where it resided. In SAI, well, it moves the goalposts again. It demands control over what we're calling sovereign intelligence.
Sovereign intelligence.
Yeah, the actual value you derive from the data. The algorithms, the models, the insights, the sort of brain power extracted from it. The argument is, if a nation's most sensitive data is constantly processed and learned from by AI models controlled from outside, well, they're basically giving up control over their own intellectual future. The AI itself becomes a strategic national asset.
That really throws the drivers behind this whole movement in a sharp relief, doesn't it? You just can't separate technology from national interest these days. So what are the key forces, the geopolitical drivers pushing this global, sprint for SAI?
Looking at the source material, 3 really stand out, and governments everywhere seem to acknowledge them. First, unsurprisingly, is national security.
Right.
Governments increasingly see relying heavily on foreign AI platforms as a major systemic risk, a critical vulnerability. And it's not just theoretical espionage worries, it's the very real risk of, say, economic coercion, or just disruption of critical services, think energy grids, financial systems, if they rely on foreign AI.
Yeah, if someone somewhere else flips a switch or even just subtly tweaks the AI's output, your whole system could be compromised. Or just fail.
Precisely. That's a level of dependency most governments aren't comfortable with anymore. The second driver is, frankly, economic competitiveness. It's quite stark. Nations see the enormous economic value AI creates. If they're only consuming AI tech developed elsewhere, they risk becoming, the term uses digital colonies.
Digital colonies, perpetually paying rent.
Exactly. Paying rent to foreign AI giants, losing control over their own industrial data, and missing out on building their own AI-driven industries. SAI is about capturing that value creation domestically. And the third one, it's maybe a bit more nuanced, but still powerful, cultural identity.
How does that fit in?
Well, big global data sets often have biases baked in. They might not reflect local cultural norms accurately, or specific languages or regional values. So the push for sovereign AI is often framed as ensuring the AI systems that shape society in education, public services, media are actually aligned with a nation's own specific context and values. The sources even mention this being a driver for indigenous groups seeking their own digital autonomy.
Okay, so those are the drivers: national security, economic competition, cultural identity. But here's where it gets really, really tricky for, say, a chief compliance officer or a CTO trying to build a coherent global strategy. This whole movement means dealing with, rapidly increasing regulatory fragmentation. It feels like we're moving way past relatively joined-up frameworks like GDPR.
Oh, absolutely. It's becoming what the report calls a tangled web of national laws, often conflicting.
A tangled web. I like that description.
It perfectly captures the operational friction this creates. Executives are now forced to weigh, complying fully with System A versus potentially being shut out of Market B. And the philosophies behind regulations are diverging dramatically. Just look at the EU versus the US.
Right.
The EU's approach, the EU AI Act, it's very much a mission-driven industrial policy. It's focused on safety, trust, democratic safeguards, classifying AI by risk. And they're backing it with what? A $200 billion digital strategy? Big money.
Huge. And then you pivot to the U.S., their AI action plan.
Hmm.
It feels much less about preemptive safety rules and much more about speed, about innovation.
Exactly. Their stated goal is unchallenged global technological dominance. It's innovation first, speed first, less regulatory friction, more focus on leading the pack.
Those two approaches, safety-first regulation versus innovation-first speed, they seem almost fundamentally opposed in some ways.
They can be, yeah. And we've seen legal teams really wrestling with this. It's like designing one car that has to meet Europe's strictest safety and emission standards and win a U.S. drag race with minimal constraints. It's incredibly difficult. So for multinational corporations, the bottom line is their AI systems now need to be adaptable. They have to navigate multiple, often contradictory legal landscapes, which means compliance can't just be a checkbox anymore. It demands a really robust, proactive AI governance, risk, and compliance framework. A GRC approach.
Okay, so the politics and the regulations demand separation, adaptation. How does that translate into, well, bricks and mortar or silicon and code? What does the actual architecture look like when a nation demands this level of digital control?
Right. It forces a total operational and tech transformation, and it really starts with the foundation, the infrastructure. The bedrock becomes shifting towards localized or sovereign cloud solutions. And these aren't necessarily just your own private servers in a basement somewhere. It could be private clouds, yes, but also isolated, geographically fenced-off regions offered by the big hyperscalers. But the absolute key is operational sovereignty.
Operational sovereignty, meaning
Meaning the infrastructure, even if it's technically owned by a global provider, must be operated by local vetted personnel. And critically, it has to be legally shielded from extraterritorial laws like the U.S. Cloud Act, for instance, which potentially allows U.S. access to data held by U.S. companies anywhere.
Okay, that makes sense. Do we have examples of this in practice? Because getting that level of isolation with global cloud providers sounds challenging.
Yeah, it is, but it's happening. The report mentions Deutsche Telekom's sovereign platform they built with Google Cloud. To meet tough European rules, they implemented strict data residency, sure, but the crucial part is the operational controls and the encryption key management. It's all strictly localized. That setup is designed to prevent anyone outside that specific jurisdiction, even Google itself, from accessing the sensitive data or the keys needed to decrypt it.
Right.
And it doesn't stop at the infrastructure. This governance has to cover the AI models too. They need to be hosted, executed, run entirely within that sovereign environment. Prevents intellectual property leakage, prevents data leakage when the model is actually being used or fine-tuned.
I can see the logic, the necessity from a national perspective. But let's push back a bit here. If the whole power of modern AI, especially foundation models, comes from massive, diverse data sets,
Yeah,
aren't we shooting ourselves in the foot by building these digital walls?
that's the core tension, the big trade-off.
And surely creating these bespoke, isolated environments makes AI development incredibly expensive for the companies involved. What's the impact on the bottom line?
You're hitting the nail on the head. That is the essential challenge. And yes, the initial costs are undeniably huge. You're looking at significant upfront capital spending on infrastructure, a really costly re-architecting of data pipelines to meet these strict residency and processing rules. And then there's the expensive retraining of staff compliance, legal, technical teams.
Sounds like a CFO's nightmare.
It can seem that way. But here's the shift in thinking we're seeing. Forward-looking finance chiefs are starting to frame this not just as overhead, but as building a strategic moat.
A strategic moat. How so?
It's about risk mitigation that actually becomes a competitive advantage. You have to weigh the cost of setting up this verifiable sovereign compliance against the potentially catastrophic strategic risk of not complying.
Which could mean
Massive fines, obviously, losing customer trust, which is huge, and potentially being completely locked out of key national markets. Can you afford not to be in the EU market, for example? So by guaranteeing data sovereignty, by guaranteeing operational resilience within those rules, you insulate your business from geopolitical shocks, sudden sanctions, data transfer bans, that verified compliance layer. That becomes something your competitors might not have. It's an advantage.
Right. It essentially makes you a trusted partner in sensitive markets. It lets you operate where maybe others who haven't made that investment simply can't.
Okay, so let's make this concrete. How does this trust, this advantage, translate into actual use cases? Where are we seeing SAI deployed effectively right now?
Financial services is a prime example. Banks are jumping on generative AI for really high-stakes stuff, fraud detection, personalized investment advice, complex regulatory reporting.
Sensitive data involved there. Hugely sensitive. So using an SAI framework, they can ensure that the personal identifiable information, PII, the transaction data, never leaves the specific jurisdiction. Like for an EU bank dealing with GDPR, moving certain financial data across borders is now seen as a massive risk. SAI prevents that.
Makes sense. And what about in government, where trust and security are paramount?
The public sector is a huge adopter too for critical national functions. Think about national health services. They might use SAI to build predictive models for disease outbreaks or to analyze drug effectiveness across their population. By keeping all those sensitive citizen health records locked down within a sovereign cloud, they ensure digital autonomy for vital public services. And crucially, they maintain citizen trust and data integrity, which is non-negotiable in healthcare. But this brings us right back to that trade-off you flagged earlier, the one the source is called the data dilemma.
Right, the silo problem.
Exactly. These powerful AI models, especially the big foundation models everyone's excited about, they really thrive on diverse, large-scale datasets, global datasets. Strict data localization, which sovereignty demands, inherently risks creating these siloed data ecosystems, data trapped within national borders.
And siloed data means limited data,
Yeah.
limited volume, limited variety, which logically leads to limitations in the AI models built on it.
Precisely. You risk ending up with models that might just be less accurate, or they might have increased bias because they weren't trained on truly global diverse populations, or they just might not generalize, well, they work okay locally but poorly elsewhere. You're essentially trading global data access for that legal certainty and control. And that introduces a very real risk of competitive disadvantage, especially for domestic companies relying solely on these smaller, perhaps less powerful sovereign models.
Okay, so that's the dilemma. If we can't physically move the sensitive raw data across borders anymore, how does a global company get global insights? How do they train AI that's effective everywhere using all their dispersed data without breaking the rules?
Yeah, how do you square that circle? This is where privacy-enhancing technologies, PETs, become absolutely essential. They're emerging as really the key technical solution here.
PETs.
PETs are basically techniques that allow you to get insights from data or collaborate on data without actually exposing the raw, sensitive underlying data. They enable global collaboration while respecting sovereignty. Two main examples jump out. Federated learning is one.
Federated learning. How does that work in simple terms?
Okay, imagine you have valuable, sensitive customer data in, say, 5 different countries, each with strict sovereignty rules. With federated learning, you train a local AI model within each country's sovereign cloud environment. The raw data itself never leaves that secure local environment, never crosses a border.
So what gets shared?
Only the learnings from the model, basically, the updated parameters, the weights, the mathematical adjustments derived from the local data. These abstract updates are sent to a central point where they're aggregated to build or improve a global model.
Ah, I see. So the data stays put, but the knowledge, the intelligence can be combined globally.
Exactly. Data stays home, knowledge travels.
Okay, and the other one you mentioned was confidential computing, sometimes called data clean rooms. That sounds even more secure.
It generally is, yeah. It
Yeah.
relies on hardware-based security. Confidential computing uses secure, encrypted enclaves. Think of them like highly secure, tamper-proof digital vaults. Often these implementations are called data clean rooms. What they allow is for data from multiple sources, maybe even competitors, or across different strict jurisdictions, to be brought together for joint analysis inside this secure vault.
But the key is,
The key is that the data remains encrypted while it's being processed inside the enclave. It's never revealed in its raw form to the other parties, not even to the analysts running the computation, and theoretically not even to the cloud provider hosting the enclave.
so you can pool data for powerful analysis without ever actually sharing the raw data itself.
Precisely. It's crucial for multinationals needing to merge regional insights for a global picture while ticking every single compliance box in every region.
This whole shift, moving from worrying about where data is to using things like PETs to encrypt and securely process intelligence from data wherever it resides. It sounds like a massive operational change is needed. The report talks about the market moving towards compliance by design. What does that mean practically?
It means compliance can't be an afterthought anymore. It's not something you check for after the AI system is built. Compliance by design means baking those regulatory requirements, those ethical considerations into every single step of the AI lifecycle.
Every step, like from the very beginning.
From the moment you ingest data through preparation, model training, testing, deployment, monitoring, and even right through to when you eventually retire a model, compliance has to be built in, automated where possible.
Sounds like you need constant proof then, not just an annual audit.
You do. It demands continuous monitoring. Automated auditing tools that can prove, basically in real time, that you're adhering to this complex, fragmented data localization labyrinth, as the report calls it.
So for the executives listening, this means pushing for tools that can generate that audit trail automatically, showing exactly where data was processed, which sovereign cloud it ran on, ensuring sensitive bits stayed put.
Absolutely. Verifiable, continuous proof becomes the standard.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. What's the final key takeaway for a business leader trying to navigate this?
It really feels like the message is the old idea of a borderless digital world, at least for sophisticated AI, is basically over.
I think it's fair to say, yeah.
And sovereign AI isn't just another tech choice on a menu, it's becoming a strategic imperative. It directly links your company's tech strategy to, well, geopolitical reality. That's the core message. The takeaway has to be about being proactive now. Don't wait to react when regulations bite or markets close. The baseline requirement for trust, especially in high-stakes industries. And maybe a final thought to leave people with, something provocative to consider. As these national AI stacks keep growing, keep diverging, what does a truly globally interoperable compliance strategy even look like? Is there a way to build a kind of unified standard, or at least a framework, that respects both this powerful drive for national sovereignty and the undeniable economic need for global innovation and data sharing? Finding that balance, that's the tightrope every multinational leader has to walk now.
A fascinating challenge, and clearly one that's going to define strategy for years to come. Thank you for joining the podcast, and see you soon.